Hi, Samantha. Thank you so much for joining us. It's lovely to see you on the other side of the world almost, because I'm in Perth and you're in Sydney, and it's almost like being halfway around the world.
Yeah.
Please introduce yourself to our audience.
Sure. So my name is Samantha, born in Durban. I won't mention which year. I'm in my 30s, the later half of my 30s. Grew up in Johannesburg. Very much spent a lot of time, as my friends used to tease me, a Santon socialite of sorts.
Oh,
I made the move to Sydney about 2.5 years ago, and been here ever since.
and the move to Sydney entailed what? It was you alone, and on what visa?
So I moved here with my job. So it was a 457 visa for 4 years. Made the move alone. I was single in South Africa. I often, when friends ask me why did I decide to leave, I said, well, I'd exhausted the dating pool in Johannesburg, so I had to new.
Oh, that's a great reason. I like that one.
You gotta open up the boundaries, right? It's been good so far, and just in maybe some background in that. So I moved here with a 457 visa with one organization, and then subsequently have moved jobs another 2 times. So transferring that visa each time. So I think it's important for people to know that even though you come here on that visa, there is still some flexibility. If you want to change jobs and that employer is willing to sponsor you, it's something that can be done.
So you came with one sponsored employer. So you had the job, you came across, and then how long were you in that job before you decided to move on?
6 months. So I worked for a global consulting company in Johannesburg. Moved through that organization to Sydney. 6 months into it, I decided. So I work in technology. I'm a tech consultant.
Okay, yeah.
6 months into it, I decided to try something new, and I moved to a tech startup. They had a vacancy, and we sort of had a good fit. I think one of the important things to mention with that is that I think to become an employer sponsor, you need to make certain types of profit, etc. So they were able to fulfill those requirements, and so they were able to sponsor my visa. But in doing that, basically what happens is that they basically have to show that that role has been open for, I think, 20 days. They had to advertise it and prove that there wasn't anyone currently within the region that applied that was already a citizen or had permanent residency.
Yes, that's right. So that enabled them to get somebody in from outside.
Correct.
Yes. Okay, so 6 months, and then you got a new job, and then what happened after that one?
So the tech startup that I worked for got acquired by another global consulting company. So even though they bought the business, they then made us job offers within that global consulting company. And because the rules are not as black and white about just acquiring a company and acquiring all those employees, they then had to show that, again, it was the same cycle where the new organization had to advertise the role and then were able to then sponsor my visa as well.
And you're still in that role?
Correct, yeah.
And how do you find the Australian job market compared to the South African one?
I think right now it's a bit difficult to say in the current climate because of COVID. But prior to that, I think I always saw a lot of vacancies. In fact, earlier this year, the organization that I work for was actually making a very sort of blatant ad, and they mailed all of us and said, well, if you have colleagues or friends in South Africa that are interested and are fit these kinds of criteria, we really want to have a chat to them. I think people here recognize what South Africans bring to the table. We're really, I like to say hardworking, but I think we just work really smart, and that's appreciated. I think we're driven and we're go-getters, and they don't really see a lot of that here. So they love to hire South Africans.
Yeah, tomorrow is always another day for them.
Yeah, exactly. I suppose you know more of that because you're in Perth. I haven't been to Perth yet, but I've heard it's nice.
It's a little bit like Bloemfontein, as they say, Bloemfontein by the water.
Okay.
It's a bit laid back in Perth,
Yeah.
but Sydney is a bit more under the pump, and it's just more people and more bigger economy on that side of the big island, as we call it. But that said, you know, it's I guess it depends on the industry that you're in as well, because I have been in positions here where it's been just go, 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 go nonstop.
Yeah.
And then I've been in other industries or working for other companies where it's been a bit more laid back and relaxed. And the other thing you've got to remember is that a lot of the people that we work with are also immigrants from somewhere else.
Yes.
So either South Africans or UK or wherever they might be from. I've worked with some Iranians before, which is interesting. There's quite a big group of Iranians as well in Australia, and people literally from all over. So it's a nice mixture of people coming together, and then you get this sort of interesting product in every workplace that's a little bit different based on the nationalities that all work together there.
Yeah. I noticed, well, maybe it's just my industry as well, but I noticed that in my industry or in consulting, the percentage of people that are actually born and bred Australians, I would say maybe 10 to 20%. Everyone else is from, like you said, different countries all over the world. Last night I was at a girls' dinner. So one of the things that is really good here is that there's a group on Facebook called Girls in Sydney, and through that I've made some friends, and it's not just for expats, it's for everyone. So I was at a dinner last night. There were 10 of us and only one of them was Australian.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yes, that says a lot. But they're all living here permanently.
Correct. Yeah.
Awesome. And in terms of having settled in and making friends and meeting people, how did you go about that? I know you've exhausted the social market in Sandton or in Joburg. So what did you do over here?
So I think for me, so when I first moved, because I had come on a work visa, I didn't know anyone and didn't have any. So I had no family here, no friends. Moved here on my own, arrived on a Wednesday afternoon, and I booked into an Airbnb. And so one of the things I do is when I'm traveling to a new city, I tend to book Airbnbs where I have like my own bedroom and bathroom, and then sort of share the rest of the house with the people that live there. So fortunately, it was a young couple. She was Canadian, he was Australian, but I think he was from Queensland. So they obviously helped me a lot because she was also an expat. So she helped me acclimatize to things. And then within my work, consulting is interesting because every time you work on a project, you work with different people. And because sometimes it's like 6 weeks with this group and then another 8 weeks with a different group, you tend to make friends that way. So I've made some friends through that, just working on different projects. Aside from that, this girls group that I mentioned, and I'll share the link with you so you can put it out there for
Great.
But it's really good. I mean, last week I went for a walk with, I went to do the Bondi to Coogee. Is it Bondi to Coogee? Yeah, it's Bondi to Coogee. It's like 6 kilometers. I didn't realize that.
Wow, well done.
So I went to do that with a girl that was here from South America, and she was here to improve her English. And so she speaks Spanish, and I want to improve my Spanish. So we decided, okay, well, let's go for a walk, and we can teach each other the language. So random stuff like that. And also, well, not so much now, but maybe a few years ago, there is meetups. Mm-hmm. So you could go and meet people like that have similar interests. For me, I would generally go to ones that were more related to technology, just to be sure of what was out there. And so that's how I ended up meeting people.
And just talking a little bit about your job again, what did you study?
I studied maths and economics at Wits University. I was supposed to have become an actuary, and I sort of just went all over the place, and then ended up working in consulting, so data and analytics for many years. And then about 4 years ago, while I was in South Africa, I got into robotic process automation.
Oh, wow.
So that's been booming across the world. And so that's actually how I got that job offer, because they were growing their RPA team here in Australia. And that's how I ended up here.
That is such an interesting field. Wow. I'd love to hear more of that. We can do that in a call afterwards. Okay. Not to necessarily bore, because I know I'm also a bit of a tech head. So
okay.
I don't think other people would be interested. I did my PhD in information systems, so that
Oh,
gives you an
amazing.
idea. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's I find it fascinating, but that explains to me how it was so relatively easy for you to come over, because your industry would be very niche and in a very big skills demand for Australians to have. So that's great that you were able to position yourself like that, and you should be easily able to move around Australia, well, in the rest of the world, really, if you wanted to. Would you consider moving either back to South Africa, or are you here to stay in Australia, or going to another country? What are your
I
plans?
think I am open to it. I think it would be difficult for me to go back to South Africa, and the reason I say that is because, I mean, in South Africa we're constantly vigilant, and in saying that, I never let it stop me from living my life and going out and doing all of those things. But that vigilance was always there, and I've been here so long now. It's like sometimes I've realized the one day so I live alone. I was in my living room and I looked behind me and I'd had the front door unlocked for I don't know how many days.
Wow.
Also, I think a few weeks ago because I work on clients, I have I have a personal laptop, I have a work laptop, and I have the client's laptop, and I just had all of them like out in my bedroom, and I was like, oh, I've gotten so used to just leaving all of the stuff around here. It's not something we would be able to do in South Africa. So I'm really grateful that I can live a life like this. But at the same time, I'm also open to where my career takes me, and that could be anywhere.
But probably not back to South Africa.
Probably not back to South Africa, but I think for the right price tag, I could potentially consider it.
And on that note, have you been back to South Africa to visit?
I actually have not been back to South Africa to visit because I hadn't traveled a lot while I lived there. Like I just sort of started traveling. I think we tend to grow up in communities where as South Africans we're like, oh well, we get jobs, we buy a car, we buy a house, and only afterwards do we start doing things that we consider to be a little bit frivolous, like traveling. So I'd done all of those things, and so that was the point at which I then started traveling. So I hadn't traveled extensively. So when I got here, every time I got the opportunity to travel, I would travel to a place I hadn't been before. And some of my friends would come and join me. So I haven't been back to South Africa yet. I was planning to head back in April this year because it was my mom's 60th birthday. But because of COVID, we obviously had to cancel that.
Yeah, it's sad. Well, hopefully COVID will be over soon. I mean, it's in Australia, it's almost just a matter of waiting for the international borders to open, and then we're basically back to relative normality.
Yeah. Well, I don't know what the status is in Perth, but here in Sydney, we're like the gyms are open, restaurants are open.
Yes.
Heading back
Yeah,
to
it's
normal.
pretty much everything is like normal. It's just the borders well, firstly the interstate borders, and secondly the international borders, but it'll happen soon enough. I have no doubt about that. Sam, what is your one thing that you miss the most about South Africa?
Ooh, that's a tough one. I think there's a list of things. I think obviously friends and family being close by is one. I think from a more superficial perspective, I miss having a car. I don't have a car in Sydney purely because I don't need one. And I miss like some South African restaurants are amazing. I think we tend to take that for granted when we're there. I miss that. And
the food or the service, or which aspect of the restaurants? Or the price?
Well, the price as well. I mean, I miss as I said, I was a Sandton socialite. So I miss like the Grill House or the Big Mouth in Sandton, and there's always like really good sushi. We had really good sushi in South Africa, which is weird. Like here sushi is like a takeaway. I'm not sure why, but in South Africa it'd be like sit down, have sushi. Here it's like you can get it as like takeaway. And
yeah, that's true. Yeah, there's mostly takeaway restaurants. I think you get a few sushi trains in Australia, but they're not as fancy necessarily.
Yeah, and I definitely miss cookies. Like Baker's biscuits in South Africa is like made with butter, and here it's not made with butter, and I miss butter.
Well, maybe you can start importing them then.
I
I think the South African shops would have most of it.
They have a few of them, but you don't find all of them at the same time. Like you might find one or two, and then like the other week I was at the Coles and they had cream soda, so I bought cream soda just as an emergency.
Yummy. I guess they're now all gone. You've finished the cream soda, have you?
No, I've kept them in my fridge. So I don't know if you and your friends did the same, but in South Africa we used to call cream soda the green ambulance.
No.
So after a really heavy night out, we'd go and get like McDonald's and a cream soda.
I absolutely understand what you do with it, but we didn't call it the green ambulance, but it's a good explanation. I like that name for it.
So I'm saving it for if I like for if it gets out of hand in Sydney. I have the green ambulance.
Do you live central in Sydney, like CBD?
I do. I live just outside the city, so it's about 3 kilometers away from Circular Quay.
Very nice. So you hop on a train to go to work?
I could get a train or a bus. So where I live in Waterloo, which is very central, so the train station is a bit of a walk. It's about a 10-minute walk to get there, and it would take me directly into the city. But also just outside, or just like the parallel street, there is a bus stop, and that bus goes all the way from here to the middle of the city and to North Sydney. So it's very convenient.
So it's at what, 10 minutes to work for you from on the bus?
On the bus, it's about 20 to 30 minutes, depending on how busy it is. Because depending on the number of stops we make, it tends to get a bit longer. But because I live so close, sometimes I'll just take an Uber to work.
And very handy. Yeah.
So
and what is the best thing for you about living in Australia?
I definitely have to say the freedom. I think there's so much that I wasn't able to do and didn't realize when I lived in South Africa. But and I think also we tend to be very spoiled in South Africa. Like I would drive like 2 kilometers to go to the store, whereas here I just walk to the store, walk home. I think it's a good lifestyle, but it's just the freedom to be able to do things when you want to. Even walking outside at night, or a few weeks ago, I have some friends that live a few streets away, but I was at their place until like 12:30, and then I just walked home.
Not scared?
Well, I wasn't scared when I lived in South Africa. I was just vigilant, but never scared. But I wouldn't take the risk. But here, it's just the freedom to be able to do that. I think that's good.
And your family in South Africa, have they considered joining you over here in Australia?
My parents, not so much. My brothers have asked me. I have 2 younger brothers. One of them works in IT. The other one's, he's a lot younger, so he's just sort of finished his studies and is becoming an accountant of sorts. So one of them has asked me about it. I don't know if it's something that they will pursue, but we'll see.
Well, there's still a lot of time left for them, I guess, because they're young. Yes?
Yeah, well, they're youngish, yeah.
Well, yes, young is in the eye of the beholder, almost like beauty, you know. Depends on where you sit on whether you think somebody is young or old.
Yeah.
It was so lovely to talk to you. Thank you very much, Sam. I really appreciate you taking the time and giving us the perspective from somebody who've come across alone and who is really social, generally speaking, because that brings a different perspective in terms of how you settled in and how you made friends. Yeah, some people come over here and they are very shy, and other people are outspoken. But I guess all of those positions that you might be in, those situations or character traits, all have challenges in terms of settling in your new country. If there was one last piece of advice that you could leave our viewers with, what would you say?
So everything I say always comes with a story. So for me, it was when I got here about 4 days in, I was sitting on the train, and as I mentioned, in South Africa, we tend to live very good lives. Like we have fancy cars and these big houses. And I was sitting on the train, and it was a really old train. It was like a super hot day. And you tend to start thinking about what you left behind. And I was thinking, well, you know, did you really leave behind your fancy car and your big house to come sit on this old train on a really hot day? And I immediately had to sort of give myself a talking to and say, you can't think about it that way, because you came here to have this new beginning.
Yeah.
And it was something that I then had to embrace and remind myself of every day, because I think that that's the point at which you can tend to go down that road, and it could lead to depression and homesickness, and it could get out of hand. So I think you just have to remain focused on what that goal was, and why you came here. And if it's something that you need to work towards, give yourself that time to achieve that. Everything doesn't happen as fast as you would like it to, but everything happens in the right time. So give yourself that opportunity.
That's true. Yes, just hang in there and have faith, I guess.
Absolutely.
What a great message. Thank you so much, Sam. I really appreciate your time.
Thanks for having me.
It's our pleasure, and we shall hopefully talk to you again soon.
I hope so. Well, take care and have a good evening.
Thank you, I do. Bye, Sam. Take care.